You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. So this is Richard Jacobs for the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcasts. And I have Stacy Edwards. She's the founder of CPAPbabes.com. And a CPAP is a device for people that have apnea. It's a continuous positive airway pressure device. It blows air into your mouth and nose and throat and keeps your throat open while you sleep, so it doesn't collapse and cause you to essentially to choke out tens or even hundreds of times a night, and helps people that have sleep apnea problems. So as far as I understand it. But Stacy, thanks for coming. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell me, I don't know, CPAP babes. It sounds like I don't know. I think of gorgeous women wearing CPAPs or something and modeling them. But what's the premise of the whole effort?
Yeah. So when I got diagnosed with sleep apnea, I'm 35 now. I think I was 32. So a few years ago. And I think it kind of started because, I was really tired for about 16 years. I was having a hard time getting a diagnosis. I was having a hard time even getting a sleep study. Finally got the sleep study, and they said it's sleep apnea. And I kind of was like, no, there's no way I can have sleep apnea because I'm a cute-ish girl. I always thought it was just big, heavy men who had it, who snored loudly, and I didn't do that. So I got the machine, and I think the first night I was like kind of embarrassed. And then the second night I just took a picture and said, I look babely. I'm a babe. And so I just started using this hashtag CPAP babes. And I was like, it's very important that one, people see that there's, this machine that has this really, really bad rap. I mean, people would rather die than wear this machine sometimes. So I wanted to kind of bring some light to it and just I'm babely. I have this machine. I'm well rested. I'm healthy. I'm not dying. So yeah, I'm a CPAP babe. It just kind of started out to be a fun thing because I think the machine gets so much hate, and I don't think that's really fair. And I think that stigma really prevents people from seeking treatment. And it's scary because sleep apnea really is a serious condition that can cause all sorts of bad health issues. So I just wanted to kind of bring some light to it, make it fun, but without making it a joke.
Yeah, that's interesting. You would think on the one hand, you're sleeping. Who's going to see you sleeping? But I know it could be definitely could be a stigma. I mean, I don't know. I may need one. I have to go for a sleep study. I guess my thoughts about it are, if other people find out you have one, they'll think that you're bad or you did something wrong or there's something wrong with you that you have to have this. So I don't know how women would feel about it versus men. I guess men would feel like they're not powerful and they're not capable. Mm-hmm. Women, I don't know how it would affect them mentally, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think the most common myth about sleep apnea is that you have to be overweight to have it, and that's just not true. So I think part of it, there's a huge stigma against people who are overweight. So I think that's part of it. If they, some people are like, oh, you have a CPAP. Well, this is what you should be doing to not have a CPAP. And I don't think everything should be about do everything in your power to get off this machine. I think it can be like, I have this machine and I'm accepting it and it's okay. So I mean, I don't know exactly what the stigma is. I think it's just that it's ugly. It's part of it. It's ugly. It's associated with kind of being overweight, and I think it's okay to be overweight personally. Like, I think that there's more important things to worry about. But, I think as a woman, I'm actually very glad that I was diagnosed in my 30s rather than in my 20s, because I think in my 20s I would have been almost too proud to wear. Oh, I don't need that. Oh, I can do something about this. Oh, there's something else. When in reality, if you aren't sleeping well, I mean, for example, your sleep apnea is weight related, it isn't always, and you can't even lose that weight unless you're getting good enough sleep to have the energy to change your habits anyway. So it's very complicated. I think there's so much wrapped into it. So obviously I got a little off track there, but
That's okay.
but yeah, as a woman, one of the things that's been interesting about having CPAP babes is people will get the machine and then they'll send me a message and they'll be like, I really did not want this machine, but I saw you making this kind of fun and it made it easier for me to accept. And now I'm using it regularly. And that's been
cool.
very powerful for me. I think a lot of times people just need a good role model, or just even just to know that they're not alone, I think is very important, because I think especially women my age will go into it and be like, oh my gosh, no one else in their 30s has a CPAP, and then lots of us do, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually really helping us function and be the best women we can be. So, and funny enough, after I got diagnosed, my husband had been diagnosed before me, but just never followed up and got his machine. So after I got diagnosed and got my machine, he actually followed up, and he's doing a lot better just with his health, and with even at work. He was very cranky before, and he does a lot better at work now, because he's sleeping better. So it's been really cool to see just how it's affected my whole family.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at some of the pictures. There's not only women on the site, but I see men and, older people, younger people. So, yeah.
Yeah, babies.
Yeah, look. Yeah.
Sometimes little kids will have it.
Yeah, that's something I learned recently that surprised me, that kids can have sleep apnea, and you shouldn't just assume that because they're kids they can't. And then, like you said, just because someone's heavy doesn't mean they have it. Just because they're thin doesn't mean they don't have it. So I guess it affects anyone.
I have a friend who's a very lean, attractive personal trainer. He's muscular, but he's also lean, and he works out every day, and he has it very bad. He uses a CPAP, and it's just totally changed his life, and his wife's life too, because she has to deal with the loud snoring. So it's so neat to see just how people benefit from it. The other thing that's interesting about with kids is that a lot of kids who have behavior issues actually just it's a lack of sleep. So I don't know the exact statistic, but I believe it's about 10% of ADD cases are actually undiagnosed and untreated sleep apnea. Just because if you're not sleeping, it's hard to pay attention. It's hard to behave in the way that society wants us to. So I always tell parents, if they're having behavior problems with kids, just get a sleep study first of all, just to rule it out, because there's things sometimes if sleeping is an issue, or if sleep apnea is an issue, you can address that. And with kids, they don't always have to go on CPAP. Sometimes they can remove their tonsils and their adenoids, and that makes their sleep apnea go away. So it's just very interesting. I think there's a whole world with sleep apnea and CPAP that we just do not know about, that I didn't know about before I got diagnosed and kind of got into it. And that's kind of why I do what I do, because I just think I could have felt better way earlier if I would have known all this stuff when I was younger.
Yeah. Besides making it seem okay and showing pictures and showing that, not everyone's alone and all that, can anything be done to make the CPAP itself look better, look less scary? Or is that not really where you think the magic is? It's more in the community of knowing like who has one, and that it's okay that, look, this lady is only 25 and she's thin and she has one. So I'm not a bad person for having one, for instance. Or is there more to it, like literally the looks of it? Do you think that would have an effect?
Yes, I would. If there's any CPAP companies listening who want to hire me as a consultant, I think there's so much that can be done with the masks just to make them fun. There's one company makes a machine with flowers on it, and then there's a mask called the For Her mask that's purple. But I think as younger people, millennials, I guess I'm a millennial, are getting diagnosed, I think there's a huge opportunity to make them more attractive and make them kind of fun. I think they've put a lot of time into making them more comfortable in the past years. Like there's lots of different masks and like configurations on your face that different places. They have one right now where the hose comes out of the top of your head instead of your nose, so that's supposed to be more comfortable. But I really think design-wise, there is a lot we could do. And I mean, I always say my dream is to have my own line of polka dot CPAP masks because I really like polka dots. So I'm really hoping that part of the awareness work I'm doing can, and maybe someday I can hook up with one of these companies and just find ways where people can personalize their mask and personalize their machines and just make it a little more fun. Because that's a big complaint that I hear from people, is that it's so medical, and it is, because it is a medical device. But I think it's something you wear every night, and some people for their whole lives. So I think taking the opportunity to make it fun would maybe make people comply with treatment more, which is the ultimate goal for most people. They have a hard time complying. So I think anything to make it fun is very important. And I'm really hoping the industry starts to kind of recognize that and go that way, as younger people are getting diagnosed and we're like, hey, we want polka dots. I want a mask with a cat face on it. I just think that's a huge thing that could make a difference for people. I think there's a lot of aspects, but I think that could definitely help. I would love that.
What about, since you're thinking along these lines, and since you use one, what things about it would you say should be changed? Maybe, a lot of people reject them. They can't use them. They say they can't get used to them, and so they don't, unfortunately. So why do you think that happens, and what have you thought of that maybe could make the CPAPs better? If you had they gave you a couple $1 million and said, all right, make it better CPAP that people will be able to use better, what would you do to make it different?
Well, there's a couple things. I think the first thing is that better follow-up is needed at the sleep clinics and with the doctors. So I feel like I have had to drive my process to get the sleep study and get in the machine and do the follow-up and make sure it's working right. That's a huge part of it. The machines now, they auto adjust, so there's a certain pressure range. But what happens is, a lot of times, if you're not tolerating it, sometimes the pressure's wrong. And then people say, oh, well, my pressure auto adjusts. But sometimes with the range of pressure, it's still not narrow enough. And people don't know that. And doctors don't really follow up on that well. So I think one piece is to have better follow-up. What I've thought about is, one thing I'd love to do, if you're a smoker, there's a thing called the quit line, where if you want to quit smoking, you call the quit line and they coach you through it. They can help you get medications to help you quit. They can help you get the patch, and they coach you through it. And I would love to see something like that for sleep apnea and CPAP, where you get the machine and then the machine has the sticker with that number on it, and someone can coach you through the whole process. They can say, oh, it sounds like your pressure might be wrong. Can you get back into the doctor to do this? Or we have a sleep tech who can change your pressure remotely. I think follow-up and support is a huge piece of it. And I think people just don't get the support they need and they quit. And it's a very, very serious public health issue, because there's people sleepy driving around. Someone in my hometown actually ran, I think, some kids over and killed them because he had undiagnosed sleep apnea and he fell asleep at the wheel. So it's very sad and it's very serious. I think there's a lot more that we can be doing with the follow-up. I also think with the machines, they're actually, right now, there's a handful of travel machines out there. I have one of them. It's called the Resmed Air Mini, and it's very small. They used to compare it to a can of like Diet Coke. It's about that size. It's about the size of a cell phone. And I received one, and my husband and I both got one for free to do a commercial for it. It's a really fun commercial. It's on the Resmed website. So it's very small, and what they told us when we got it is that it could not be used as a daily machine. But in reality, my husband broke his big machine, and he's been using the Air Mini for months now, just as his daily machine, and it's been just fine. So I think making the machines smaller is going to make a big difference. And then obviously making them more fun. And the other thing is that they're just expensive. Mine, even with insurance and with my deductible, I paid about $1,000. And that's a huge hardship for people, especially I live in Seattle, and housing is just really, really expensive here. So it's hard to get those healthcare costs in and with the deductible. So I think if there's any way to drive down the costs, that's a huge issue too. And then again, just awareness and taking away the stigma. One example that's very interesting is, the show Roseanne came back for about a month or something, and then something happened with it. But the first episode, actually the opening scene of the Roseanne reboot is her husband, Dan, it has a CPAP machine. And I think in the original series, he died, but actually he didn't die, or I don't know what happened. But I guess he probably had sleep apnea, and that's why they thought he died. He had a heart attack, which sleep apnea can cause heart attacks. But when this reboot was happening, I saw this article and it said, Roseanne's back with the same cast, the same characters, and a horrifying CPAP machine. And I was really upset about that. And I probably did a ranty video on YouTube, and I sent the people who wrote that article a letter, because putting that kind of language out around it, horrifying, they could have just said, and a CPAP machine. But I think that it's really contributing to the stigma, and it's hurting people's health a lot. So I think finding a way to change the way we think about it and change our mindset about it is going to really help us make progress in getting more people the treatment that they need. So yeah, mindset's a huge part of it, and just the public image. And that's really what I'm hoping I'm doing one tiny bit at a time, is just making people feel okay about it. So there's just so much wrapped up in it that needs to be changed. And I want it to happen. I'm hoping as time goes on, we can really do that. Even if it's just a little, even if it's just 10 people stick with treatment for longer, I think that can be really powerful.
Well, why don't you, since you have an audience, why don't you do a service? You have to disclaim that it's not medical advice, but you could see if people that are in your audience are willing to have a buddy. Let's say, you can get assigned a CPAP buddy, an experienced user, for like the first 30 days. And they'll check in with you, like, I don't know, once a week or something, or once every few days, and help you.
I've definitely thought about that. There is a company right now named Lofta, and they have a coach that they can assign you when you get your sleep study through them. I'm so passionate about so many things. So there's so many things I want to do. Interestingly, I have, in addition to sleep apnea, I have a different sleep disorder that's similar to narcolepsy. So I'm just tired all the time. Funny enough, I feel like a very it feels weird as a sleep apnea advocate to say that I'm tired, but I do have an underlying sleep disorder called idiopathic hypersomnia. My grandma had narcolepsy. So that unfortunately interferes with a lot of what I can do. But at the same time, what's so great about that is having both of those, I'm able to participate in lots of different kind of awareness opportunities. Like I just went to DC and talked about funding sleep research and that sort of thing. So I would love in the future to be able to start some sort of business. I've thought about becoming a sleep tech so I could be like a coach, just coach people on sleep apnea. But yeah, it's hard to know what I can do with a medical background or not, sort of thing. So I have lots of good ideas in my head, but it's just kind of finding the time and energy to do, and money to do them. So, but right now I think there's a couple really big things I've done lately. I just did a video for a very big website. And so I'm hoping with that, just there's little ways I can get my message out and gain a following, and then hopefully be able to take on some of these projects and maybe get a little funding here or there. I think maybe there's a grant out there, because I think it is needed. I can't do it alone with the amount of energy, and I have a new baby too. Well, I have a 1-year-old now. So I'm just very passionate, and it's just always like, oh, there's all these things I want to do, but it's not in the cards quite yet. Hopefully, I'm hoping that something like that comes out, because I think it's so needed. Right now, what's nice is I'm on Instagram a lot and I'm on Facebook a lot. And so sometimes people just send me a message and they're like, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. And I'm like, well, not medical advice, but maybe try these things. So it's nice, even just on a small scale, to be able to help people out and to be kind of the go-to person, even though it might not be legal. But I don't give medical advice.
Well, I know. As long as you disclaim it and you tell people to check with their doctor, I think, well, again, I'm giving advice, but who knows? That may help. I don't know. You have to find out.
Yeah, definitely.
What are the most common problems that people come to you with, and what are some of the general suggestions that may be able to affect them?
I think one is people have a hard time keeping their mask on at night. And there's actually a guy on YouTube that is just the best. His name is the Lanky Lefty 27. And I refer people to his videos a lot because he basically looks at every problem you have and he can say, okay, here's what you should try. I think people's pressure is wrong a lot of the time. So talking to your doctor about a pressure adjustment. I mean, unfortunately, though, sometimes the doctors don't really know. So you're not supposed to do this, but I actually adjusted my own pressure. And you can find out how to do that on YouTube, but I didn't tell you that. And my doctor saw that I had done it, and he was like, "Did you do your own pressure?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's fine. You have the knowledge to not mess yourself up." But there's also there's a couple Facebook groups for sleep apnea and CPAP that kind of will tell you that insider advice that have been very helpful. So I think wrong pressure is a common problem, and I think the other one is people have the wrong mask. So I think one thing people don't know is that in the beginning stages, your insurance usually lets you try a couple different masks to get the right fit. So the first 30 days of treatment, usually they'll say, okay, you can try a couple different masks, but then it's, again, the follow up and getting into the doctor to do all that. And then also sometimes if treatment hasn't kicked in yet, you're still really tired. So it's hard, but really I think pressure is one of the most the things that people struggle with the most, and they don't know how to change that or how to approach that.
Well, what does that mean? If it's too little pressure, you'll still feel tired. If it's too much pressure, you choke, or what happens?
Yeah. So basically, the pressure, there's a range. I'm trying to think of the technical term. So usually, when you get the auto adjusting machine, the pressure ranges from 4 centimeters of water pressure to 20 centimeters of water pressure. That's what it's set at, which I don't know exactly what that means, but it's basically how strong the air is. So I had that range, and at 4, and what my machine was doing, it had a ramp feature, so it would put me in at the 4 level, and it would blow the air in, but it wasn't enough air. So I felt like I was choking. And then after a half hour, it would ramp up to what I needed, which was, I think, like 8 to 10. So basically the range was too wide, and I wasn't able to get the air I needed. So I think sometimes if the pressure is too little, people feel like they can't breathe, and then they just take off the machine. So a lot of times there's just a pretty simple adjustment needed there, because if you're at 4, and then even if you can keep it on, you have a lot more episodes because the 4 pressure, the low pressure just isn't enough. And then what Jason, the guy on YouTube, the Lanky Lefty 27, he explains this very well in one of his videos. He says sometimes you go in at the 4 pressure, and then it adjusts within a half hour, and then you're at a good pressure. But in that half hour, you're having all these events, so you're still tired. Then some people will shut off the machine in the middle of the night to get up and go to the bathroom and come back, and then it does it all over again. So it has to adjust all over again. So there's just you're having more events and you're extra tired. So, and it's very interesting how I've actually never heard a doctor talk about this. It's all stuff I've learned on my own, which I think is very telling, just how much support is needed for the whole thing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I heard they call the process titrating, and they have auto-titrating ones that are supposed to change as you need it.
Yeah, and they used to, when they weren't auto-titrating, you'd usually have to go in and do a follow-up sleep study to titrate it. I don't think they do that a ton anymore. I think they still do it some, but I think the auto-adjusting machines were supposed to solve that, but I think there's really more needed than what the auto machines can do. I think you do really need a human to look at that and kind of see what's going on. So, and Jason, I wish I should find his website, but he actually will do he's a sleep tech, and he'll do a consultation with people too and look at their data, which I think is a very good service too. So I'll try to find that information and get it to you because he's a great resource. He's, I think, pretty much the number one sleep apnea YouTuber, and he's funny. So his videos are not only informative, they're very entertaining. So I just really like him. He's
I see him. It's the Lanky Lefty 27, and the website is freecpapadvice.com. It looks like.
Yeah, and he has home sleep tests that he offers for a fee, obviously, but yeah, he just does a lot. He's amazing. He's really fun.
Okay, that's excellent. So
Yeah.
what feedback have you gotten from the community you're building that surprised you that you didn't think would happen?
I mean, I just didn't think it would pick up really. I mean, I have two other businesses that I've done stuff with and they did okay, but with this I was just surprised at how many people needed it. You know, how many people just even if they're doing okay with therapy just to feel better about it. So I was just surprised that people responded to it so well. I was surprised that I got so many nice messages just saying I made it easier for them. It just meant everything to me because I've struggled so long with it and it's just like just to know that my struggling wasn't for nothing. So yeah, that's the most surprising thing is just that people are listening and that people need it and appreciate it. And it's it's a very weird kind of thing to have. Like I think I've done all these normal things in business. I have this home organizing business, I have a social media business, but then I get the weirdest, most niche thing and people respond to it. So, and especially to know how many women really need that kind of support too, because I think a lot of people don't even realize that women have sleep apnea at maybe, I don't think it's researched well enough, but at the same rate as men. It's not like just a men's disease. Like I thought, and like what many people thought before, it can really affect anyone, any body type, any gender identity, any uh snoring or not snoring. There's just so many things. So it has, I think that's just been the most interesting thing, just to see how many people are like, this is awesome, thank you for doing this. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. you
Hmm.
know it's a sleep apnea machine, but it res people, and that's just been so fun for me.
So what do you see as the future of your work over the next year? What would be ideal for you to have happen?
I mean, I would love to just develop more of a following, and what I'm doing is just trying to be consistent and get the word out there and take every opportunity that I can to spread the word. Like talking to you, doing this big video coming up. I went to DC about a couple months ago and talked to representatives about sleep research. I did that there's a nonprofit called Project Sleep, and the founder of that has narcolepsy. So that's been really cool. So right now, my plan is just to be plugging away and get the word out there as much as I can. And I would love, as things grow, I would love to do more influencer work. I think I don't quite have the time and energy to start my own thing at this point, but I would love, I'd love to partner with
And
some
that,
of these companies just to make things, I mean, younger kind of. I think there's a huge opportunity to appeal to a younger generation with this kind of stuff because people my age and younger are needing these masks. So I think there needs to be kind of a upset in the industry to make it more fun. So yeah, I think there's so many things I want to do, but just right now I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and see what comes my way and just know that there's big things ahead. So but I think there's so many different forms it can take. So I'm not quite sure exactly what it all is going to look like, but I really think there are big things coming and that I can do a lot. And I mean, really, I think one of my big goals is I would love to be on Ellen. I think that would be a huge platform to just to get people diagnosed and to get them feeling better about their machines. So I say my three goals are awareness. So awareness about sleep apnea and getting diagnosed. And then the other one is appreciation. So appreciation for the machine, and then empowerment. The same thing, feeling empowered about using the machine instead of having it just be this thing that you despise. So anything I can do to reach those goals is what I do, even if it's a small thing. That's what I'm going for right now.
that's great. Well, I'm glad to have you on the podcast because I've talked to well over 100 sleep professionals, and we've talked a lot about apnea and this is what happens during apnea scientifically, et cetera. And yes, it'll make you feel better, but it's been very rare to talk to anyone that talks about once you have a CPAP, how to make sure it works for you and what are the psychological aspects of it that affect you, whether you'll use it or not, and comply and actually get the help you need. So I'm glad you've been on. And so what's the best way for people to reach you and to get in contact with questions or ideas?
The best way is probably Instagram. I do have a website and a blog that I have a hard time keeping up to date sometimes, which I need to get on. But I'm at cpapbabes.com. And then my email on there is, I think, cpapbabes@gmail.com. But really, if you want to talk to me quick, DM me on Instagram because I'm a little more involved in that. And that's kind of where most of the action happens is there's lots of pictures, there's lots of people talking. I do also have a Facebook group that's not super active, but I'd like to get that going. And that's just CPAP Babes on Facebook. And then I think I'm on pretty much all the platforms. I really like social media. So maybe too much sometimes. But yeah, Instagram's the best place, and it's just CPAP Babes on Instagram.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.